Are you willing to accept Christ's invitation to know Him more intimately, love Him more intensely, and follow Him more closely, and then go out into the world and live His good news? If you say yes, then you could be the 13th apostle. Join Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey, the odd couple of Catholic radio, as they ride the radio waves 2 by 2 to share the goodness, beauty, and truth of Jesus Christ and His church. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the 13th apostle.
Can a Catholic vote Democrat in good conscience? Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the 13th Apostle, where we explore the good, beautiful, and true of the Catholic faith and the Catholic Church. This is Tom Caffrey, co-host with Dan Duddy of this wonderful program. Wonderful, Dan, from a blessing standpoint, not that we're so wonderful. You are. You're wonderful. But
back at you. Yeah, you're wonderful.
So way.
Yeah.
See, we can be humble. Just let the other guy do it.
Yeah, that's right. Please do it. Please do it for me. I'll do it for you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Are you been all right?
Yeah, this is, it's life. You know, when I did a lot more reading about, biographies and about, let's say, founding fathers and whatnot. And one of the things I used to enjoy, not just the big issues, but day-to-day stuff. What was their life like? And that included their health. You know, what did they have to deal with? And it's amazing what they had to deal with. And yet, for a lot of the guys, as we know, all you got to do is look on the on our currency. A lot of them lived to be a ripe old age, notwithstanding the illnesses they had to deal with. Like, I'll just say, with John Adams, he actually got the smallpox vaccination. And this story, the detailed story of his experience and his family's experience with getting the vaccine, is really powerful.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's really amazing. So that would be interesting. I just thought about this for the first time. It'd be interesting to have brought that up in the context of the controversy around the COVID vaccine, although they're very different. I'm not talking about the vaccines, but of course how they were made. I'm putting "made" in quotes, ladies and gentlemen, because smallpox just existed, and then we'll give you some of the germ that person has, and then
right.
God help you. Let's hope you survive.
Yeah.
So anyway, we just got into that because. You and I just living, right? We just living. It's you take everything that comes, right?
The controversy still exists. You know, it was a political football. It was turned into a political football. I know we're going to go into this in a different angle, but political, it's still there.
We're going political.
Waiting to be resurrected again. It'll come up again in a debate, probably, an upcoming debate next week. What would you say?
You said political football, but we're going to talk about politics just with the opening, right?
Yeah.
So why do you think it's okay for a Catholic to vote Democrat?
Why do I think?
No, do you think?
Do I think?
Yeah.
I do now. I'm more accepting and more tolerating. I'm seeing more of the light of the 50-50 type Catholic polls. Catholics, how they appear in the polls. 50 Republican, 50 Democratic, which I was not aware of. And I was really strongly against the Catholics who were voting against Democrats. And I saw these polls maybe 6 months ago, and I was a little bit surprised by it. And I kind of thought that we had really weak Catholics who were selling out the Catholic Church. I've always literally said, you can't be a good Democrat and a good Catholic. But then upon researching and coming into to this episode, in the seven themes of Catholic social teaching, those 7 themes, which is not an even number, it's not even an even thing to talk about, but those 7 themes are really prevalent in one side versus the other side. So, and it's a 50-50 draw on the polls. So it's becoming a little more realistic and accepting and more tolerable for me to see that it's actually okay. But in my feelings, on my personal feelings, that it's never ever okay to vote against life and dignity of the human person, as as we know it in the womb of the mother. So I've always been adamantly sure that was the only way that I was going to vote. Bishop Barron, who I've listened to quite a bit over the last couple of days, felt that it's okay to vote for something democratic, that's more democratic, like options for the poor and the vulnerable, in spite of life and dignity of the human person, which is not really a strength of the Democrats, but not to go vote for pro-choice, not dig in and say, yeah, I'm voting pro-choice. That is wrong. That is anti-Catholic. But really, if you look at the seven themes on the USCCB website, they're really kind of split with regards to what the personality of one side is versus the personality of the other side.
Yeah, and there's never been a scale put forth by the church grading or weighting, WEIGHT, each issue. Okay, well, there's right. You know where I'm going with that. 100 points for against you for abortion, 10 points for you if you increase your donation to the church and whatnot. But you know, we are called to know our faith. You know, whether it's going back to St. Peter, be prepared to give a defense for the hope that you have, and our long intellectual tradition in our church. We're not the only ones who have a long intellectual tradition. I mean, we got, you know, if it weren't for the Muslims, Thomas Aquinas wouldn't have had a lot of access, maybe no access, to Aristotle's work. So the older I get, I hope the wiser I get. And I do see it's impossible for me to turn my eyes away from wherever the truth leads me, or wherever and the truth at where I landed in pick any day in my life, anything that I'm reading, listening to. Certainly in the last 10 years, my mind has been blown wide open. Now, you know, I used to say I'm not a liberal because, you know, a liberal means, you know, you open your brain and your brains fall out. And I don't do that throwaway line stuff anymore. I haven't done it in a long time. It's easy to say somebody's this or somebody's that. You know, it's so easy to label somebody. That's lazy thinking. Yeah. Nobody's just one thing. And so now we get to the church teaching. It was really put forth by Cardinal Bernardin in Chicago, the seamless garment. You know, and of course that's taken from John's Gospel, and, you know, them after the crucifixion, not wanting to tear the guards, not wanting to tear up that Jesus' beautiful garment, no seams. And so it's also known as the consistent ethic of life. So it's you know, you can. There are people who say, well, yeah, but you, like we were talking about before, you can't equate raising the minimum wage. Let's say we're talking about $1 or something like that, with quote unquote the unborn, pro-life, right? Which really, I mean, let's be real. When somebody says pro-life, we already know what automatically comes to their head. It's abortion. We can't. Well, I don't see how anybody could defend that position. That's the only thing. Now I'm going to throw this out to you and to our audience, and it relates to an episode we did quite a while ago. When you and I went, speaking of this, it just hit me now. You and I went to the pro-life rally in Philadelphia, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, something like that, maybe longer, 3 or 4 years ago. And we were walking to the rally, and we came upon this guy who was in bad shape. Really, nobody was around. Right?
Yeah.
He was in bad shape. And I remember saying, can you imagine anybody making the argument that if his mother, so let's say he's gradually been that way, or, increasingly over the course of the years from his childhood, say that this guy looks like he's 50. He said 50 years of suffering.
Yeah.
So you know where I'm going with that. Okay, so
Sure.
that's a justification that his mother should have had an abortion. Let's take it now with, it was an interesting, a big study done where researchers looked at, it was called the Turnaway study, and it matched women who, I don't remember the number of women, but it matched groups of women who were seeking abortions. They matched those women with their Experian credit scores. In the months leading up to the day both groups sought an abortion, they were seeking an abortion. They had comparable financial status at that point. But when the researchers, when they looked at the women who were, quote unquote, turned away because they passed the gestational period in their pregnancy, so they couldn't have an abortion, that group experienced 78% past due delinquencies and 81% increase in bankruptcies, evictions, and court judgments. So
those that were past the gestational period,
who couldn't have an abortion, who were turned away from the abortion clinic in those particular states.
Right.
So what obviously, maybe it's not obvious to some people listening. From my perspective, I don't say that as an excuse or justification, as many do, for the right to access to abortion. But I do say that as a society, what are we doing to facilitate turning the tide? And I don't know that we can. I want to believe that we can. But with the pill, with contraception, our Catholic VP candidate, J.D. Vance, approving the abortion pill.
I've heard so many times, and I find it to be true, especially in the earlier months of pregnancy abortions, that it's a form of blocking babies. But what you're saying is it's contraception. It's contraception. But beyond the gestational period, you're saying that when there's a real tough financial fallout, that's what brings people to the abortion mill beyond the gestational period, right, with the hopes of having an abortion? Is that what you're making?
Well, that's the point of this. That's one of the points of the study.
So if that's predominantly true, and I believe it, I believe that it's absolutely conceivably true, then why can't we have something financially ready to save those babies at Planned Parenthood, if that's what the case is, if that's where the case lies? And I know I'm probably coming across this in ignorant form because of the amount of money that's made at Planned Parenthood and how much money is given to Planned Parenthood. I know that money speaks, but why isn't the money going to help them in those situations?
Well, I agree with you in one sense. Let's take Planned Parenthood out of it. It seems like every other month, maybe it's every month, the president, Congress, whatever, they're approving this X number of billions for this war, X number of billions for that conflict.
Right.
The only people getting rich are the defense contractors and whatnot. So what, as a society, you say, okay, well, we increase the minimum wage. Well, is it the consistent ethic of life that we're talking about, the seamless garment to say, okay, well, let's, a lot of people, I used to be dismissive of, quote unquote, the living wage. I'm not dismissive of it anymore. And to face poverty, that's, if you've never faced that, you can have a say, but you can't, it's again, know about something, know something. You can read about poverty, but if you experience it, it's totally different. And you say, okay, well, what do we do as a society and make it We don't have, let's say, a coast to coast paid family leave. And I know some people are probably thinking this guy's talking, wild leftist progressive. No, again, I want to do away with the labels and say, what is it? What are we doing as a society to facilitate having intact families? We build houses that are very large. There's no such thing as a starter home anymore. There hasn't been in decades, at least in New Jersey. So buy it. You know this. I mean, fix it up, and then okay. Well, then you raise a family. If the market. This is where I have a problem with the free market. And what's so free about it when you have when you don't have a starter home, when you have rent that's sky high, all these things. This is what our church teaches, and we categorize a lot of this stuff. That's left-wing stuff, that's progressive stuff, that's liberal stuff. Here's the right wing, here's the conservative. No, that's not, we're not in any better shape with those labels.
I agree, but I still think that the fundamental issue of all of these components that make up the principles of Catholic social teaching, and you mentioned the consistent ethic of life, comes down to the dignity of life, the sanctity of life. And until, our left are not known to be those that, honor creation, whereas the right is, at least stereotypically, if that's the right word, they are. Until we come across the board that we are all in with the sanctity of life, or even the rights of the unborn, we're going to have serious cracks in just about every level of even Catholic social teaching.
Wait, you say sanctity of life. I just want to make sure, and so our audience knows.
The holiness of life.
Yeah, but you said it both times
creation.
In the context of the child in the womb. Or
right.
Are you limiting it to the child in the womb?
No, I'm not, because in the revelations that I've referred to before, I see the dignity and the sanctity of life more so in the rights and the responsibilities of people, the options for the poor and the vulnerable now, more than I ever did before, even though that sits more on the left than it does on the right. That's the kind of light that hit me when I was, got into my studies heading towards actually this election, really for this episode, but it's really opened my eyes for the election. So I'm talking about the blanket, true human dignity of all life, whether the unborn or people on earth. Yes.
Well, if you, like as usual, everything has a price. Has a price tag. And I know that when we look at the great society that Lyndon Baines Johnson, President Johnson, ushered in the 60s, every measure that I've read didn't help. And that was trillions and a lot of waste and whatnot. And I know that there are surveys and studies showing that the black family was in better shape prior to the Great Society, and the Great Society facilitated children out of wedlock. Each pregnancy, each child you have, you'll get more money, even though, but you can't have the dad involved or in the house. So that's not a society that's facilitating the intact family and the flourishing, which is a word our church frequently uses, the flourishing of humanity. And, it's not just Catholics, we're all children of God. And a lot of Catholics, forget about that. I used to forget about that or disagree with that. I'd say, no, if you're not Catholic, no.
Right, right.
Come on. It's just...
And as Catholics, we're really called to bust through that seal and see, the whole nature of humanity across the world. And there's a globality to it as well that's a struggle, that the global, the potentials and the fear that the Democrats want to go global with politics is something that, the right is, truly against, but truly the call to family and community and participation and such is absolutely one of the 7 themes of Catholic social teaching. And on the left, we find things that are happening over there with homosexual, I've got my 2 fingers up for marriages and so forth.
Dan,
and of course, yeah.
Excuse me. It's amazing. As soon as you said that, I was writing LGBT, because that's amazing you would say that. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's amazing.
No, not at all. So I'm saying that there are some fundamental. Here's the thing. I think, and I'm not going to be able to jump into this, but I'm getting hit with this. The left stumbles on subjective truth. That's what they stumble over, and the right, Catholicism on the right, Catholicism should be really thriving on objective truth, as C.S. Lewis tells us. That's what he was most intrigued with by Christianity, was objective truth. And I think the autonomy of the Democrats on the left is what we really stumble over as Catholics on the right, that there are subjective truths over there. LGBTQ is part of that argument.
Well, to me, that's
transgenderism.
Yeah,
it's part of that argument.
That's to me, that's the biggest. And I know people. I have close friends who say, "Forget that." In fact, one friend, if he was in the same room, I probably would have decked him. He said, "Grow up." When I mentioned about, of course, if I deck him, that wouldn't be a witness to my faith. But
I would have loved it though. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
He told you to grow. What did he tell you to grow up about? What were you
saying
talking
that
about?
That's a minor issue. It's it's the pocketbook. It's the economy, stupid. From the Clinton campaign and whatnot. But no, obviously, what we're talking about, if transgenderism, and saying, well, that goes to the core of human identity, and saying
Right.
you're no longer a creature, you're the creator.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you have that thinking as part of your fundamental philosophy and your platform as a political party, you've lost me.
Yeah, it's a tough nut to crack too.
I mean, there are times I haven't voted for, and I may not vote presidential in this
right?
election. I may just vote down ballot because, well.
Yeah, you got to have your heart in it. I mean, it can get to the point where, look, we should, as Catholics, should just completely divide out of this because neither side is really working. I don't trust either side. I mean, people could easily be saying that. And let's just bail out, unite our church, and, as you say, vote down ballot. And as Father Jim Flanagan, the founder of the Society of Our Lady of the Most Holy Trinity, always said, the most fundamental truth is, let God worry about that. Let God worry about that. Because it's getting pretty screwy, Tom. It is.
I mean, I don't know what if he were here, I would have said, okay, Father Flanagan, tell me, what exactly do you mean? Do you mean cast your vote and then let God worry about it? Don't cast your vote, like don't get involved, let God sort it out?
That's a good question.
Because as the expression goes, an indecision is a decision.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Good point.
I just, but sometimes your decision is, okay, well, I'm not gonna eat that. I'm not gonna drink that. I'm not gonna watch that. I'm not gonna vote that. And well, the last thing, of course, coming from New Jersey.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter that much, in terms of. New Jersey's very democratic state.
It's hard to flip it. Well, we came close. We came close recently, but yeah.
Well, close as in, okay, well, instead of being from the Jersey Shore to Los Angeles, we're now in Ohio. We did have a Republican governor a couple of times not that long ago. But anyway, I think that we're going to wrap it up. But I just think it's what's it? They had a no labels party. You call yourself a Christian? That's your label. Okay, how's a Christian live in the world? Render unto Caesar. You know.
Yeah. It's time to pull that card. And this was a good civil discussion, and I hope that people out there can find a way to have it the same, because the discussions have been so violent lately for the last 6 years or so, and we really need to step back and have a good civil conversation about these things.
You paused after the word civil, and I thought somebody really quickly put in war there. It was easier.
Oh.
Well, it was less. It was easier when you had a Mason-Dixon line.
It's black
and you
and
had
white.
slaves and no slaves. But now it's like we're marbled, every state.
Oh yeah, great visual, marbled. Amen. Yeah, we're marbled personally. So many of us are cut up in different directions.
Yeah.
Amen. Yep.
Well, you have more melanin than you. No, I probably have more melanin than you. Did you do your DNA or your
no,
23andMe?
My kids won't let me.
Okay,
they're so proud. They're so proud to be 100% Irish. Is what I've told them. They don't want me. They don't want to find out the truth. I said to my son, "Daddy, I'm going to do it." He goes, "No, Dad, please don't." He's so afraid. I don't know what he's afraid of. That I'm Mongolian or something. I don't know. Not that there's anything wrong with being Mongolian, but he believes.
For our Mongolian listeners, Dan was not.
Yeah, sorry. No, nothing. Yeah, didn't mean anything by that. But when you think you're 100% Irish, all right. We're going to get Mongolian letters now.
I look forward to them. All right, what's coming up next, buddy?
Yeah, let's stay tuned, folks, for the Angelus and Your Prayer Intentions with Peter and Jemmy.
WQPHradio.org, Campaign Central. Let's all have this, keep having a discussion, try to get closer to that objective truth in our subjective experience that Dan's talking about. So God bless you, Danny.
God bless you, Tommy. God bless you all.
Thank you for listening to the 13th Apostle with Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey. For more information on Dan, visit his website at www.danduddy.com or email dcduddy@gmail.com. Tom's website is faithpilgrims.com or email trcaffrey@faithpilgrims.com. How about you? Will you be the 13th Apostle?